Belatedly 2017 Utilities Advisory Commission is now in session. Let's take attendance and then we'll add people as they come in.
Danaher here.
Cook here.
Schwartz here.
Okay, let's go ahead and, excuse me. We can't do approval of the minutes. Are there any members of the public here to address any item that's not on the agenda? Yes, ma'am. Come on up. We've got Lynn Krug.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Krug. I am an employee. I'm a resident, and I'm also the chapter chair of the SEIU employees for the city of Palo Alto. The reason I'm here today is to talk about a couple topics that I'd like to hope you keep on your future radar and this can be implemented. One of them is the history of arbitrations and grievances in the city of Palo Alto. I'm very concerned for accountability in organizational management over the past, I've been here like 16 years. We have an inordinate amount of grievances and arbitrations that originate from public works, utility operations, and utility engineering. Largely, we identify this as not having an HR presence out at East Bayshore, and that would include all areas in East Bayshore, facilities, parks, public works, engineering, utilities, electric, water, gas, wastewater, environmental control, and water quality control. I'm sure I've left someone off. All these areas, and probably about a quarter of your total city employees, are not located in this building. They're located out there. And up until just a few weeks ago, we did not have an HR presence there. Thank you to utilities management for coordinating that. But that is not coming forward as a permanent position. That is just a temporary thing. What I would like to address is that we are able to provide an HR personnel, hopefully with some sort of engineering or union background, that can move into a position located out at East Bayshore to address these issues, since our arbitrations and grievances are above average for surrounding cities, and this costs you a great deal of money. I would say in employee time directly, each individual grievance is likely to cost you anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 for an actual arbitration in staffing time, investigations, and meeting attendance, report preparation. So there's a great deal of cost that comes down with this besides employee morale, and we want to greatly improve that work environment. I think it's a change in attitude that, hey, you know what, we just weren't looking at that. And I think this is something easily addressed that we can help improve the work environment, especially in a work environment where we're obviously having problems hiring people with expertise and moving. We want to show that we have a quality of life in those departments and we're accountable. Okay, along the same lines, that's one, HR presence out at East Bayshore. And you know what that comes with. It comes with money. Okay, so the other one is we have positions that have been open in water, gas, wastewater engineering, and one of those happens to be the division manager. For lack of a division manager, which is now being addressed by Ed Shikata, Dean Batchelor, and other employees in management, we would like to hastily encourage the employment of someone with engineering expertise in engineering project management. Because without that, and excuse me, we drop in organizational performance, accountability, and it costs more in employee time for employees and management. It results in project rebids, project redesign, and we're lacking in employee expertise. These things need to be addressed by having a professional who has extensive project management expertise. We're no longer able to move up through the silos of people having only worked in the city of Palo Alto to have that broad range of project management experience. Our employees are begging for this. And we have had multiple discussions about this. We hope we'll get your support and that we get a professional with engineering expertise and extensive project management experience for our water, gas, wastewater division of engineering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to skip over the approval of the minutes until we get a quorum, and that will be our...
Okay, there's another
Oh, you have an item not on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Cook. The reason I hadn't submitted a card on the oral communications is because I had nothing to say during a meeting of the Utilities Advisory Commission. And I'm surprised the representative of the Attorney's Office hasn't spoken up, but needing a quorum for a meeting is not limited to taking action. It also requires quorum for deliberations. And in fact, the Brown Act and the Government Code specifically says if you have a meeting and it turns, that you called a meeting to order and at some point you don't have a quorum, all you can do is adjourn. It doesn't say that you can have staff reports while you're waiting for someone to show up to provide a quorum. I know that as a courtesy to staff, this meeting is being held during the regular work hours, but for whatever reason, if you can't get 4 of you to be here, then you don't have a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we won't make any revisions to the agenda. I think we can have the reports. Anyone have any reports from commissioner meetings or events? Let's go ahead and go with the Director of Utilities report, please.
Thank you, members of the commission. This is actually a little challenging with the lighting such as it is, but I'll make do. Just like to share some information with you in terms of some recent events. First off, we'd like to bask in the glow of, literally, of the recognition that our utility received from the Smart Electric Power Alliance, SEPA, having ranked first in SEPA's annual top 10 utilities list for solar watts per customer connected to the grid in the year 2016. This is SEPA's 10th annual survey, including figures from 412 utilities across the country, and CPAU ranked #1 with about 2,700 watts per customer installed in 2016. This is the 4th time Palo Alto has made SEPA's top 10 list of utilities. Awards were announced last week at the Utility Solar Conference in Tucson, Arizona, where our own utility resource planner, Lindsay Joy, delivered a presentation to conference attendees about the history of Palo Alto's solar programs and accomplishments in leading up to this first place award. I'd like to congratulate our entire team on that recognition. In addition to issuing awards for solar, SEPA provides research and technology resources for member utilities, including evaluation and analysis of industry trends. One recent contribution from SEPA is a white paper, which Commissioner Schwartz shared with us regarding utilities' relationship with electric vehicle vendors, owners, and use of technologies to manage the charging of effective electric load management. We shared links to this recent paper in the recent media update to the UAC. I'd like to note progress on local solar projects. A number of activities are underway as part of the city's local solar plan to generate 4% of our community-wide electricity from local solar projects by the year 2023. In addition to the clean project applications for solar PV on city garages, there is interest for installing solar arrays on parking lot carports at a number of non-city facilities. When these projects are fully built, the system should generate about 0.5% of the city's annual energy needs. Staff expects the program to be fully subscribed by the end of this year. Staff is also evaluating the potential for a 500 kilowatt PV carport project at the municipal golf course parking lot, which could serve 100 to 200 residents and small businesses under this community solar program. Staff discussed the project feasibility for an initial conversation with the Parks and Recreation Commission last week, April 25th. Commissioners are generally supportive, but highlighted a number of topics that will require careful consideration as we further develop the concept. Some considerations include tree shading, reflective glare at the adjoining airport, incorporating a physical design that blends with the surroundings, and potential impacts on attracting golf course patrons, and the risk if the parking lot needs to be reconfigured within the 20-year life expectancy for the solar project. We do expect to bring this discussion back to the UAC potentially next month. Finally, Earth Day Festival, or actually a couple more things. Earth Day Festival and the Great Race for Saving Water was held on April 22nd with our 5K Fun Run and Walk Festival. This was the 4th year the city has hosted a family-friendly event to celebrate the environment, water resources, sustainability, and climate action. This year saw the biggest turnout to date and was perhaps the most successful in terms of number and variety of activities. In addition to partnering with the City of East Palo Alto, dozens of community and environmental groups, nonprofits, businesses, and student organizations gathered together to share resources for a healthy climate and healthy community. City plans on hosting this event again next year on April 21st, 2018, so mark your calendars. In terms of a few upcoming events, we've got registration available on cityofpaloalto.org/workshops for our heat pump workshop with Passive House California coming on May 24th in the afternoon, 3 to 6 p.m. Also, green building, lighting, and air quality workshop on Saturday, June 3rd from 9:30 to noon. Also would note some upcoming dates that the July UAC meeting is currently scheduled for July 5th. And I believe we will, given that this is going to be an odd week with Independence Day holiday on Tuesday, I believe we'll be doodling for an alternative date for that meeting. Also, the joint study session with the council is scheduled for August 21st. After the council's July break. And finally, I would like to note that this is Chair Cook's last meeting with the Utility Advisory Commission. Chair Cook has served since the year 2010, which may feel like a lifetime ago. But nonetheless, on behalf of staff, really like to acknowledge and appreciate your service. We will certainly arrange with the City Council for an appropriate date for commendation and have you back with the full City Council to acknowledge your service as well. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right. I think we should, I'm expecting Commissioner Forcell to be here any moment. I would just as soon go to item number 3 now for discussion.
Okay, Ms. Smart Grid, we prepared to start that conversation?
So I think there's some speakers after the presentation.
And I did hear from Commissioner Ballantyne, he won't be able to make it.
Yes, thank you.
And just to note, we have 2 public speakers. We'll have a staff presentation, then public speakers afterwards.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Shiva Swaminathan. I will be reviewing with you our plans for a smart grid assessment and developing a technology roadmap in the next 6 to 12 months in coordination with the utility strategic plan. We have had extensive discussion in the past with the UAC and the Commission, UAC and the Council on this topic. We'll talk about that, what are the lessons we've learned by undertaking some of the projects in recent times, and discuss the outlines of the consultant statement of work, and we'll seek your input at a high level. So back in 2009, there was a joint council UAC study session which evaluated or council learned about the different applications and applicability of smart grid application to the utilities. And then they recommended that we do a study of its applications. We came back with that study results in 2011, which evaluated that such investment would cost about $15 to $20 million, but the technology and the readiness was not quite there for us. And we had a relatively efficient operations here for meter reading purposes. So there was a cost savings was not as great as some of the joining municipalities. So they recommended not to defer such investments for a few years, but in the meantime do the pilot projects. And what we will briefly discuss the outcome of the pilot projects. You've learned about these through our quarterly reports as and when they occur. So this is just a recap. And then the council approved the $400,000 Customer Connect pilot to provide electric, gas, and water meters for 300 homes, and also time of use rates. So this was what the prior discussion has been about. Oops. So an outline of the pilot projects and the evaluation we've done in the past 4 to 5 years. We implemented this 300 home Customer Connect pilot. Customers were provided the opportunity to see the 300 customers who signed up were provided the opportunity to view their electric, gas, and water loads in granular hourly fashion. We were also able to detect about 50 leaks a year or for each of the years for the last 4 years. That was a good value the customers got. They were able to view it there was a customer from Europe in the middle of winter who detected something, there was some alert, and they kind of were able to fix. We were able to help them. We also implemented time of use electric rates primarily driven for electric vehicle customers. There were 3 tiers: a summer peak, a mid-peak, and then off-peak. We also evaluated conservation voltage reduction is the ability, all these smart meters also have the ability to detect voltage where they are situated. So we have visibility of the voltage profile along a feeder, and thereby ability to optimize the feeder voltage, and as a result, reduce energy consumption. And then for some interested customers who had in-home displays, which are devices which you can instantaneously see what the meter is actually reading from within the home using a Zigbee radio. That's number 4. And then we did a number of projects to leverage distributed energy resources. We have a large commercial demand response, summer demand response program for large commercial customers. Some of the larger PV systems also have inverter controls which can inject capacitive energy into the system when we need it, and also remotely controlling and turning on and turning off electric vehicle charging stations which the city owned. We've done a number of these efforts to try to learn and try to evaluate the value proposition. So what lessons did we learn from this endeavor? We have a greater appreciation of the various technology and applications and how it applies to Palo Alto. Also the cost drivers. So some of the costs we had estimated previously when we said it was not cost effective for us turned out to be lower than anticipated. For example, the mesh in the city was the radio mesh to read the meters. The estimate initially was about $1 million, but we were able to get it done for less than 100,000. So there are some, we've learned the cost drivers and the value drivers. Greater appreciation of the expertise and staff resources we need, not just to implement it, but also post-implementation maintenance and optimization. We clearly have a need, if we were to implement this, to realign internal staffing, training, and focused change management initiatives, and ways to manage implementation risks, and rely on external services if and when we need, because we don't have all the expertise. There are many folks who do this day in, day out, whether it be installation, project management, communication, customer engagement, that type of stuff during project implementation phase. So this is all kind of related to smart grid related projects, but this assessment is broader than just smart grid. It's technology as a whole. Smart grid plays a larger role, but so this is about the smart grid pilots. But the work plan is broader than just smart grid. So review the pilots, the consultants whom we retained. So we had 21 proposals narrowed it down to 4 and picked one entity, Utility Works. They are on contract with the City of Alameda, City of Reading. It's not Reading, Riverside, City of Riverside, and they are well respected. They are part of NCPA, so they are well respected and very versatile on the issues. So they'll kind of help us through this, and we expect to come back with our findings sometime in early next year for discussion with the UAC. And then if found feasible, the contract also provides for a phase 2 and 3. If found feasible and if everything works out, we expect to go back to council, come back to UAC with a recommendation and go back to council to begin the implementation process. So the consultant could help with phase 2 and 3 as well, if we so choose. So elements of the technology roadmap, it's just not whether go or not go, but also they'll help us with prioritizing, coming up with resource requirements, timelines, and sequencing, whether we are set up organizationally and what are our resource constraints, and most importantly, staffing, training, and communication strategies for change management. Also making sure our risk management processes are in place, whether it's technology obsolescence, how do we manage these contracts. For example, when we initially did an evaluation, we thought those electric meters would last 20 years. But technology changes fast, so our cost effectiveness, we may probably have to shrink that window. So we may, next time we do it, maybe a 10 to 15 year window, which we'll do our cost evaluation, because these meters become obsolete. We don't have to necessarily change it, but it may become obsolete. We may be forced to change. And then incorporate input from the stakeholders and communicate. So it's a wide variety of tasks that the consultant will help with. This is not a customer engagement work plan, but to come up with a plan to how to do that and what do we need to do. This is a busy chart. This kind of broadly lays down to convey that we are coordinating this effort with other technology projects which we are undertaking. So this is, we can come back to this if need be, but this is essentially saying we are in the process of replacing our enterprise resource planning software, SAP, which currently serves both the ERP, enterprise resource planning software, as well as our CIS billing system, customer information system billing system, with a new set of software. So what you see on the top in yellow is a city-wide effort to replace our ERP system. So tied to that is our customer information system, which is our billing system. So that has to be kind of implemented and be in place before we can fully implement the AMI MDM system. What you see at the very bottom there is we are hoping to continue at maintenance mode our 300 home mesh and AMI systems till like 2020. And by the time this work gets done, it'll be the 2020 timeline. So there you see phase 1 in red, phase 2 and phase 3 work, which the consultant will do to help us through over the next 5 years or so. So this contract is a 5-year contract to help us in different phases. Okay, so in terms of timeline, we are today provide to seek your input on the work plan, and then the contract is on track to the council in May 8th. So we plan to do a project kickoff, and they'll start reviewing documents in May and June, and the on-site visits and coordination with the strategic plan July through October. And then we plan to come back to the UAC in the winter, early January, February timeline for on the preliminary findings and recommendations, and then out to council. That's all we have to share. Would appreciate high-level input from the commission.
Thank you. And we have 2 members of the public that have asked to speak on this item. Let's start with Jeff, please, and then Herb after that.
Okay, I sent you a email message about this, so I'm not going to cover everything there. But just to say, I would find it helpful to find out how many companies staff asked to bid on the RFP. And then of the 19 bidders that did bid, it would be nice to know what their names are and the dollar amount of their bid, so we compare it with the bidder that staff recommends the council choose.
If I might interrupt, sorry, Jeff, this is Ed Shikata. Now that we have a quorum, perhaps I could suggest the chair call the meeting back to order again, and we could go through the pieces, the more formal pieces.
All right, Jeff, would you mind, we'll get back to you in just a moment. So I'm going to call the May 3rd, 2017 Utilities Advisory Commission to order. It's late. We're starting at 12:45. Let's do a roll call first. Cook.
Schwartz. Forselt.
Vilsath.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I think we can probably go back to the public comment
Yes,
then
we can. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We're starting with item number 3, and we've got a public comment. Jeff, sorry to interrupt you. Start over if you want, or just go from where you were. Thanks.
Okay, starting over. I think it would be nice if staff said how many companies were asked to bid on the RFP for and of the 19 bids that staff actually got, who sent them in, who bid them, and what did they bid? So by the time it gets to council, council can say, well, we now understand why they recommended the one they recommended. Did anyone other than staff review the bids so far? It turns out I serve on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Fiber and Wireless, and for some wireless contracts, CAC actually reviewed the RFPs before they went out. And in one case, they actually reviewed the bids that came back. But as far as I know, CAC didn't do anything about this particular RFP. So that's a resource, in case staff wants to take advantage of it. As far as the performance of the smart grid system itself, I'd be particularly interested to know what we think the bandwidth is that we'll need. It's kind of easy to deceive yourself into thinking, you don't need much because they're only smart meters. But the entities that actually run smart grid systems like Chattanooga say, well, you need more than you think. So it would be good if the consultant got into the details of that, and it'd be good if the consultant had the expertise to speak with authority on the subject. Another performance item is latency. Some smart grid things require very low latency, and fiber is better than wireless for that. Reliability, fiber is traditionally more reliable than wireless for that. Security. So all of those things in the consultant's work should be covered, and when we get the consultant's report, it'll be interesting to see what's said. I think Chattanooga's done a very good job on smart grid. You can argue about whether they needed $111.6 million grant from the Energy Department in order to do what they did. But in any case, I think it would be cool if the city benchmarked what it aspires to and what it actually accomplishes against what Chattanooga has done. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Barak.
Thank you. When this item was on your commission's agenda in 2011, I believe Chair Cook was the only member of that commission who is still on the commission. When it went to the council, there was an 8-page staff report, a 170-page consultant's report from Enernex, and a 40-page survey report from RKS. In terms of what I found through the survey is that the main concern of customers is privacy and control. And they view that as sort of as a marketing concern, that someone may be trying to motivate people that smart grid is a bad thing because of privacy and control issues, and therefore the city should take that into account in how to market the system. I believe it's also technology is important. I believe that a fiber to the premises system provides better privacy on that system than the wireless. I also believe in terms of effectiveness of the system that customers are not going to be wanting to know what happened an hour ago. If there's some spike in usage of some utility, they want to know right away, because over a longer period of time, they may be using a number of different appliances, a number of different usages. And to have that kind of responsive system, I also believe that the fiber to the premises will be better. Finally, in terms of what needs to be done in other operation technology in the back office in the city, that's a major concern, because those processes and technologies have to be changed to meet the time sequence that you're having and the customers would want in a smart grid versus the kinds of systems that we have now that are geared to the billing cycle. At this point, I realize some people may think, well, there'd be a cost savings because you wouldn't need the meter readers, who might be, with salary and benefits, might be close to $1 million a year by now. But you probably need other staff to do these other works, and I don't think that would balance out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is new business item number 3 that's here for discussion. Commissioners, questions for staff or any discussion?
Yeah, okay, I'm confused. What are we going back to Shiva's presentation?
We are going to us. His presentation is complete, so we can say whatever we want.
So we're not, okay. I just wanted to know which thing we were on.
I was just pointing out that this is item number 3.
Okay, so I would also love to see the list of who submitted bids. I think that would be great. And so I have a couple questions. Okay, so in your pilot projects, is there a place where we can see what the results were? So did they actually provide incentives? Did people shift their load, for example? Did it have the desired effect that it created an incentive? And
So we have some internal, not too scientific assessment, but part of the scope of work is for the consultant to review that work and publish it.
okay, so
So for leakage, so that's with respect to did they shift their load? We have some information, but it's not necessarily data validated, not data, statistically valid. It's more of, it's not necessarily statistically valid, but in terms of water leakage detection, yes, there is
okay,
information.
so is there anything we can look at
Yes.
to see what were the results of the pilot, understanding that it has not been fully vetted and reviewed by a consultant yet?
Right. Yes, the quarterly reports periodically provides those updates. We can kind of pull those data together and provide it at one informational report next time, perhaps.
Okay, and did you do any kind of qualitative interviews or anything like that to
Yes,
sort of
we
understand?
did. In
focus
fact,
groups or-
very recently.
Okay.
And we can share that.
Okay, that would
with us
be,
too.
I'd find that very interesting. And then what platform did you use for the web portal, and what level of granularity did people see?
So the platform was called the Customer Energy Management Portal, and it was a web-based platform.
No, I mean, did you make your own, or did you buy
No,
one?
it
So
was a
whose
hosted service. It was hosted service by a company. Honeywell Elster was our prime contractor for this effort. and they subcontracted with a company called Utili Smart, from Ontario, Canada, who did the portal. We got 3 portals, one of a customer portal, where customers can see all 3 commodities, what their consumption was, compare, so for example, the time of use rate was their regular rate, what it would look like. And then we had a utility portal for us to manage the system. And third, we had a network health portal, which we can look at voltages and outages. So we got 3 portals, all web-based.
And so for the consumer portal, did they see their usage for every hour, every 15 minutes?
Every hour.
So every hour, okay. Because there are schools of thought that think that hourly is a really common dilemma, but there are quite a few schools of thought that say it's not granular enough for people to be able to really understand what it is that's happening. And so sometimes they use a disaggregation application on top of that, but there are people who think that if you can see what's happening every 10 or 15 minutes, that is better.
So the disaggregation, we enabled customers who wanted to disaggregate it to do that through the Zigbee radio, and some of the customers did try doing that, but we didn't take responsibility for that.
Okay. So one thing that when I saw the material from UtiliWorks, it struck me as so what they were outlining was a very generic process. It was very detailed, but it was very generic. Was there anything that they provided that specifically looked at or described what they thought was unique or unusual about Palo Alto? That's something that gave you a sense of reassurance, that they understood what was unique is maybe too strong, but unusual and specific to our community.
As I said, we evaluated the top 4, and then we called them for interviews in Palo Alto in person, and they tailor-made their presentations to Palo Alto.
Okay, so would it be possible to get to see what they called out in their presentations that was specific to our community and the nature of, the fact that we have this very technically sophisticated, green-oriented community in the middle of PG&E territory where people are bombarded with messages about what is possible is a different thing than if you are, in Lodi, or you're not going to get the same kind of, it's not going to be the same kind of issue. So consultants can either prepare a proposal that's completely generic that could be any place, or they can do a proposal that shows they understand the location. And so I'm saying if there's something that's specific, that I would really be interested in seeing that.
I have to admit, I'm a little confused. Well, and perhaps a bit of a clarification might be in order. The item that the commission's being presented with today is really the work plan going forward on our smart grid sequencing and next steps with respect to the implementation of technology. The UtiliWorks contract is actually not before you today. That will be going to the City Council next week. Right. And this is as much perhaps practice and the way that material has been brought forward previously as much as anything else. But such as it is, the contracting decisions are taken directly to the council and are typically have not been brought to the commission for review. We're talking about the substance of the work, not the selection of the
No, I
consultant.
understand that. Okay, what's been presented to us is a standard process of the way one might lay out a project. Okay, there's nothing. You could put it on anything. Okay, there's nothing specific to our situation.
Right.
Okay.
In terms of the work ahead and this
roadmap
such as is described.
Right. You can
and that, just to be clear, was not developed by UtiliWorks. It was developed by our staff.
Okay, but so what I'm saying is so it's not clear to me who did what or whatever. But my point is it's generic. Okay, and so what I'm trying to understand is, what was in your process as you did, what was the piece of it that gave you a sense that said, this group or another group understands our special issues that exist for us as a community that are not the same as Riverside or another community, okay? Alameda has a bunch of different issues, okay? Some of which are the same of ours, some of which are different. It would be useful to know if they did that at all.
Yeah, so I think that's a relatively easy question to answer in a sense. We provide them all the materials we've produced. They've been in this area. Some of their consultants have lived in the area. So when we interview people, that's exactly what we're looking for. They're not spitting out something generic, okay? So
I'm just asking if there's something that indicates that it's not generic, can I see what impressed you of why you picked what they had was not generic?
I could speak. I was on the panel as well. So what impressed me about Utilismart, right, is that Utilworks is their approach. So they do a lot of, and they're also experts in the area and their experience in other municipalities, and they do a whole 12 to 18-month beta testing. So I think that's what caught us. It's very thought through, the process is. In regards
we can keep going. Each of us can talk about what impressed us particularly about this.
No, I'm okay,
So-
but I just want to say this. I'm a consultant, okay? I understand that consultants can give something generic, or you can give something that's specific.
Right.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's their process. So you don't need to go anymore if that's what they gave you and that's what you accepted.
No, but
okay?
also it's probably what we as staff seek out. That's how we distinguish between consultants. And it's our job to make sure that they are uniquely qualified to serve our purpose for this community.
I think one of the Jonathan Abendschein, Assistant Director of Resource Management. I think one of the things we are looking for tonight is feedback on some of the things that we need to be paying close attention to during this project. And so getting some feedback on the unique factors that you're thinking about would actually be really helpful to us right now, if you're able to give that to us today.
Sure.
Exactly. So perhaps just to elaborate on that a bit, in terms of the scope of work that we're looking to this consultant to assist us with, it really is the sequence of procurement, as has been noted by Shiva, and in particular from my radar screen, it's issue of risk management and how we proceed with the implementation of the new technologies across the different utilities, how we ensure that as from an operational standpoint, rollout is done in a manner that understands our resources and the like.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm questioning. Okay, so I'm asking a different question. So I'll take that offline and try that, ask it a different way. Okay, so one question I have on the schedule is, my question is, how are you going to pick the customer information system if you don't have any functional specs for what you're going to need in the future? Okay, so there are CIS systems out there that can do a little, and there are CIS systems that can do a lot. And so I'm not saying you have to have the technical detail of it, but you have to know what you want it to be able to do, and so that you can, out of the 10 or 15 that you might look across, so that you can make sure you get the one that's robust enough in the right way. So I guess as I look at the sequence, that was something that jumped out at me.
Yeah, so in that sequence chart, what you see on the top in the yellow and blue, that's a CIS ERP procurement process. The specs have been developed. That's a different RFP, and Utility Works will not be helping us with that. That's a different process, and that's the spec development for CIS.
Okay, so you're going to get a different consultant to help you with that?
They're already working on it. So the consultant is Plant Moran, and this consultant has been a subcontractor to Plant Moran, has worked with us on developing that part of the work. So they are kind of different pieces, and so the CIS.
I'd be interested in seeing that. And then one thing that sorry, go
Oh,
on.
real quick, one thing. So when we developed the specs for the CIS, we did take into consideration of the smart grid and the MDM system. So there's an optional specs. So there's this functional specs for the CIS, and there was a smart grid component as well.
Okay, I just, if it's allowable, I'd like to be able to just see those, because having seen a lot of other ones, I can tell you that a lot of times there's stuff that's missing.
I think another important aspect that was included in the specifications was review with rate design and operations staff to think about what sorts of things we're looking at implementing over the next 10 years and making sure that the CIS was able to handle that. An example is the net metering successor tariff. We need to make sure that we're able to actually run that through our billing system, for example.
May I make a suggestion? Judy has a lot of experience in this area, so we're not reviewing the contract here, but perhaps you could discuss directly with Shiva offline or others.
Okay, I was under the impression that I had to do it in a public forum to ask the questions. Is that true, or?
Okay.
Okay.
But I know what would be helpful is hear things, things that can help on the policy side would be great. Or, they've asked for feedback on their assessment and development of their roadmap and implementation plan. So any comments you have on that would be great.
I do have a comment on the roadmap. This shows presentation of final report to UAC at T+300, and then the report goes to the City Council a couple weeks after that. In your comments, you talked about showing the UAC a preliminary report earlier. My suggestion is you consider some interim discussion of issues. Maybe it's at a couple points in the process, lessons learned or whatever, along the way, so that when we get that, or maybe some of us can see it in draft earlier, that would, particularly Commissioner Schwartz, that would be useful. Can that?
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the roadmap or the implementation plan? While people are thinking, in case there's any other comments, I'm just wondering, have things changed a lot in smart grid in the last 5 years since we last looked at this in 2007, 2012? Obviously, you've had some of the major utilities have already had these in place for a number of years now. I'm just conscientious of the comment you made about, the technology changes. I think it's easy to envision it more and more that there might be people using a smart meter for time of use, trying to decide when they're going to use their electrical appliance or when they're going to use the various utilities. And then also the utility trying to do demand response or whatever with, through this. Have the devices changed quite a bit, or is it more that the way they are used is different now?
I wouldn't say the devices have become more robust, I would say, but the capability have not necessarily changed a lot in the last 5 years. But the applications of those data or information, that application space has much more robust, and there's experience out there, so which we have had, and we've had others who have done it too. So technology, so there's hardware, network, software, and then application. So the hardware hasn't not necessarily advanced in the sense of something brand new, but it's more stable now.
And the other thing that we came up with, or the question the commission had in 2012 was, is there a real value in these devices? And so I think over the years, people might have thought, hey, the City of Palo Alto Utilities is usually sort of more on the cutting edge of a lot of things. You know, we're sort of pushing policy and technology in ways that are beneficial for the community. If you looked at neighboring utilities, you might say we're sort of behind on the smart grid, certainly as it applies to smart meters. Is there, have you gotten to the point yet where you feel like there's value in implementing putting in smart meters and smart grid, and then it's just a question of how it's implemented at this point, would you say?
Correct. So we definitely do see value of how and when is the issue. I mean, for a lot of distributed energy resources coming online, whether more PV or more electric vehicle charging, the time of versatile rate schedule for customers, all that requires AMI. And also these also used as sensors, voltage sensors along the distribution feeder, so that has value too. And another whole host. So this is kind of, I'm giving you an AMI-centric answer, but there are other technology aspects to this too.
Okay, great. I don't have any other comments.
I have one question, and forgive me if this was addressed before I arrived. The report talks about how the consultant's methodology will include determination of the NPV of the project, looking at the costs and the benefits. And does that explicitly include some notion of the cost of carbon included in that calculation?
Yes.
What does Palo Alto use for the cost of carbon? Is it the market rate, or is there an assumed societal cost of carbon?
Depends on the situation. So for the electric, it's embedded within the electric prices or the natural the price of green energy we get. So on natural gas, it's a market.
Okay.
I just wanted to address something that Mr. Borak brought up about the idea of privacy. So one of the things that I'm working on with the Department of Energy is a program that's called Data Guard, which is a voluntary code of conduct to be adopted by utilities and technology companies, that there are some basic principles to ensure that consumers' data usage, their energy usage data is kept private. And so I can connect you guys with what those are, and there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that right from the get-go and use vendors that have adopted the voluntary code of conduct, and so that it's basically the practices that a good actor will use, but it is a way to validate for the community that you are paying attention to that. And I think it's, you know, they're all reasonable, and it's a kind of thing that I think could be reassuring to members of the community who are concerned about privacy issues in this regard.
That's great. On behalf of staff beyond the Utilities Department, appreciate that. There's a parallel discussion or referral we have from the City Council to develop either a policy or an ordinance around privacy protections.
So this would be a shortcut, or you could get it done faster because other people have done the heavy lifting.
Very good.
But I think, I think to answer your point is that, the whole idea of smart grid and how it's evolving and what it's doing, we do not have to worry that we're the guinea pigs. Okay, that there's just a lot of really good installations and utilities that have adopted this some time ago are layering on other applications and incentive programs and Internet of Things. And so there's, it's in a really different place, I think, than it was when you discussed it 5 years ago. And so the tipping point has happened where it's no longer really in the industry if but when. And so I think Palo Alto can be reassured that we're not stepping out on a limb somewhere doing something bizarre. We're sort of coming into the mainstream of things, and there are a lot of I think the vendors who had issues or exposures or whatever in how a meter worked or where something, that they've sort of figured those out and figured out what the right thing to do. So, and the applications are certainly getting better and more integrated. And the biggest thing that's different is that there is very little that we would have to do that would be custom. I mean, it's the availability of a choice of good applications and technologies of what's here and what's been implemented. We can take advantage that there's turnkey kinds of things that can just be, you know, where you set parameters for us, not that you have to code it all yourself. So we're in a different situation then.
I'm inclined to move on to our big budget item number 1 next. Does anyone have any more comments on this item? Okay, thank you very much. Oh,
Can I
yeah, Dave.
propose changing item 2, moving it up? I think Councilmember Felstuff was interested in the storage, and he has to leave at a certain time. You sure? Because it's like a 10-minute presentation, a 5-minute discussion.
Okay. Not. Oh, sure. I mean, I'm totally fine. Okay, let's go to item number 1. Thank you very much, Shiva.
So before I begin, I want to thank Commissioners Danaher, Forcell, and Johnston for participating on the UAC subcommittee and providing us very good insight. So hopefully I've incorporated some of those in today's slides. So the first few slides could be a kind of a department level. Sorry. So throughout the year, we're monitoring our budget, and conducting our operations, we're kind of vetting ideas that goes into the budget cycle. The budget cycle officially starts around November for us when we start planning, and then we start submitting our operating and capital budgets and our position requests or changes. And then around the January timeframe and February timeframe, we do some more internal vetting and do the financial forecasts and the rate analysis. And then around the March timeframe, we bring it back to the city managers and the executive level for approval, and HR as well. In April and May, we bring it to the UAC and the Finance Committee for review, and then in June is the final budget adoption. So overall, the projected rate adjustments for this year are 14% for electric due to new renewable projects coming online. There's also increasing transmission costs to accommodate these new renewable projects. We also have an increase in capital and operating expenses due to deferred maintenance and CIP projects. For gas, we're actually not proposing a distribution rate increase, but we are implementing the carbon neutral gas plan. So that's about a 4% increase for customers, which is about $20 a year for an average customer. And for water, we are proposing like a 3% increase in the distribution rate. That's the SFPUC pass-through for the Hetchy upgrade. But we're also proposing to remove the drought surcharge, which is about a 7% decrease. So the net impact is about 3% decrease for most customers. Fiber, there are no real residential customers on this, but this is a contractual increase for EDF1 customers. I just want to show that we are proposing a CPI increase for the fiber EDF1. And for wastewater, there is no proposed change. The overall residential increase is about 2%, which is equivalent to about $45 to $50 a year per customer. In this slide, it shows also the total bill, including refuse and storm drain. Refuse is proposing a 5% increase. This is the final year of a 3-year plan to balance the residential expenses to the revenues. So hopefully going forward, there won't be any sufficient or increases. For storm drain, property owners recently approved a new storm water management fee, and that was a 4.8% increase. And one of the new components in this storm drain fee is to construct green infrastructure projects to reduce street flooding and pollution. So the net increase is about 2.5%, and the annual change is about $80. Here's a comparison with nearby cities. Palo Alto is much slower, as you can see, in the electric and the gas than PG&E. For wastewater, we are below right now below 30%. So electric, we're about 37% below. Gas, we're about 27% below PG&E. For wastewater collection, we're currently about 30% below, but the reason for that is because Menlo Park and Redwood City are both being served by Silicon Valley Clean Water, and they have a major upgrade in their conveyance system. It's a $300 million project over 5 years. So the city's water quality plant will be doing similar upgrades in the next few years. So we're expecting about 5% increases in treatment expenses for the next 10 years or so. And for water, we are about 40% above the neighboring cities. And this is kind of due to capital investment because for aging infrastructure. We also have debt service. We recently bonded $35 million to create a new reservoir at El Camino Park. We have 7 reservoirs, 7 emergency wells. And we also have a different customer mix than some of the other cities. Our split is about 40% residential, 60% commercial, whereas other cities could be like 25-75. So the commercial customers bear a larger portion of the fixed costs. And so overall, the total bill is about 16% below our neighboring cities, which I'm proud to announce. This is a breakdown of what we consider kind of discretionary versus non-discretionary charges. So the discretionary charges are either market-based rates or they're fixed over several years, such as the commodity costs, the equity transfer, the debt service in the electric and the water fund, rent, and allocated charges. Within allocated charges, we include administration charges, such as accounting, finance, purchasing, and facilities. It also includes IT support and maintenance fees, vehicle maintenance and replacement charges. Whereas in the more discretionary salaries and benefits, we consider CIP projects and other your materials and supplies, your contract services, and your customer energy efficiency rebates. So these will fluctuate year over year. Here are some cost management strategies we've deployed. So due to the increasing CIP expenses, we've been having to rebid some of the certain projects and even reduce the scope of certain projects to stay within the budget. So it is a kind of a balancing act between costs versus, I guess, CIP improvement. So that's something we need to vet more internally. Structural and staffing reorganizations. Whenever there's an opportunity within the organization, we try to realign staff. In this part of this budget proposal, we're proposing to combine both the gas and water meter shops to add staffing flexibility and advancement opportunities for the employees. So in anticipation of the CalPERS lowering its rate of return from 7.5% to 7%, the city is proactively addressing the unfunded pension liability by contributing an additional 10% to a pension trust. For utilities, that's about $800,000 contribution. For the city, it's $3.4 million in total. Utilities also exploring mobile workforce applications to assist employees in the field and replace paper forms with electronic forms, and so staff doesn't have to come back and duplicate work or may possibly make data entry errors. And also another thing we're focused on this year is training and offering more classes for employees. And lastly is we're working with the joint agencies to monitor external costs, such as working with NCPA to contain new regulations and reduce other allocated charges to the city. If there's questions, and please feel free to ask. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, you know, I don't know on an item like this how to handle it. So we do have a member of the public who wants to speak on this item, and I'd rather have the public speak before the commissioners do. So I don't know, we could break.
Could we wait a slide or two? I understand Councilmember Phillips is going to leave, but there's some important point coming up on the next slide.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So here are some competing challenges and trends. So on the left side, you'll see some rising costs, where on the right-hand side, these are either results of the costs or just competing trends. So as commodity costs go up, such as in the water and renewable projects, we're also seeing the decrease now in customer usage, either conservation or more efficiencies in buildings and homes. And we're also seeing more behavioral changes, I guess, on the customer demand side. For capital projects, as costs go up, we've been not be able to replace as much mileage as we have in the past. So for instance, for gas, we try to replace about 3.8 miles per year. In water, we do about 3 miles, and then wastewater collection, we try to do about 4.7 per year. But due to the increasing prices, the mileage that we've been replacing the last couple CIP projects is about 50% or 50% of what we used to do, or 75%. So for instance, for water, we're doing 2 miles instead of 3, and wastewater, we've been doing 3 instead of 4.7. And today, or just yesterday, we had a bid close for gas, and that came in size-wise about the same, but the cost was almost double. We were expecting about 3 million, it came in closer to 6 million. And finally, salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits is about 49 million, or 15% of our budget. However, we're also having difficulty filling these positions. Last year, we had 32 vacancies. This year, we have 37 vacancies. So even though costs are going up for salaries and benefits, we're actually not utilizing now because of the difficulty in retaining and attracting employees.
Right. So yeah, I thought this was the most important slide in the presentation. It's beyond the pay grade of the UAC, high as it is, to make any decisions on salaries or the like. But there have been a huge number of vacancies for a long time. It's clear that that's one reason some of the CIP projects are behind. There was the comment from the staff member earlier in public comment about things, and I think I'm worried that's starting to degrade performance, but also be cost ineffective on things that we can't maintain the staffing that we want, probably because of salaries more than anything else. And secondly, Dave, thanks for explaining that we're at 50% on the CIP according to plan, but we probably need to give a look at what are the implications if we stay at that level on the long term about replacing our plan, and do we have to really think rethink the budgets, given construction costs and the like?
For like the gas project, for instance, we just got the numbers yesterday, but I think we are planning to ask for a BAO to add the $4 million to keep on schedule for our replacement. Yeah. And we'll probably be doing the same for the other projects as well, okay. Hopefully.
Those are the two principal learnings we had from the budget review last week.
So is there anything that the UAC can do about this, or do we just have to sort of extend our thoughts to Councilman Filseth to bring it back to the City Council?
Well, if I might weigh in, I think there's also a discussion that we'll have both at utilities management as well as citywide management. The news with respect to the bids on the gas replacement project is actually first time I'd heard it right here in this presentation. So as would typically be the case, we want to evaluate bids a little more specifically, number of bidders, not unlike the questions that happened earlier with respect to proposals on a consultant project. So I think we'll need to drill down some. At this point, this is fresh information for the commission to be aware of, as in the context of the overall budget for all of the utilities. These are just a number of the vectors that we're dealing with. And so I think, to your point, it's information for the commission. With respect to the council, the issues of salary and benefits are certainly an ongoing conversation as well, and I think we would suggest take it under advisement.
I was just going to ask that, given that this is very fresh information, we're going through the budget process in the month of May, and is this going to be in time to make it into that process? So we haven't looked at the utilities yet, but it's coming up in the next week or so, and is this going to make it into that?
Yeah, I think the discussion we're bringing on the 18th to the Finance Commission on with respect to the utilities budget will be at the macro scale. Issues like Dave pointed out at a project-specific bid information really don't affect the recommendations we've got at that macro scale. I think they do affect how much we can get accomplished in the upcoming year. So on the project on the capital side, that would be the implications. On the operating side, as Commissioner Danaher pointed out, I'd use the term vectors, the issues we've got with vacancies and how that then reflects itself in or is reflective of salary and benefits is an ongoing discussion.
Why don't you go on then?
All right, some upcoming initiatives for FY 2018. As you all know, we're embarking on a new utility strategic plan. So hopefully with this one, we'll get more customer or employee engagement and more UAC engagement as well. So we'll have an update on this at the end of the this meeting. Downtown University CIP project. This is a joint project with planning and also Public Works. Utilities will be replacing water and gas mains along University, and transportation will be looking at traffic signal and ramp upgrades to be compliant with ADA, and Public Works will be trying to improving the streets conditions. We've already been meeting with the business districts and communicating our plan and getting their feedback. The gas carbon neutral plan. So in order for this, for the natural gas is about 27% right now of the city's greenhouse gas emissions. So with the gas carbon neutral plan, hopefully will get us to that 80% by 2030, or at least help contribute to that. And so to get there, we're going to need to buy some environmental offsets and some biogas. A smart grid assessment and technology roadmap, Shiva presented that today. We'll be getting a consultant to evaluate and develop a business plan and a roadmap. Local generation. So we have like 5 new clean projects coming online. So the clean local energy accessible now to increase the PV facilities on the city. So the goal is to provide 4% of the city's total energy by 2023. So there is a nice demand for it now. And workforce development, we're engaging more training classes. Last year, we offered a leadership academy to the employees to help develop their supervisory and leadership skills so they could be more effective on their jobs. So that's it at the department level. Then we'll start talking about each individual fund. So
Okay, let's go ahead and have a public comment now. Mr. Bra.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to talk briefly about the Fiber Optics Fund and specifically the initiatives which in the handout for this commission would be on page 26, or if you have the full budget document, it's on page 428. Specifically in bullets 2 and 4, in bullet 2, it says evaluate new opportunities to expand existing commercial dark fiber customer base in other business sectors, and the example it gave as network backhaul for small cell deployments in the cellular industry. And then bullet point 4, it says develop a work plan with the Citizens Advisory Committee, the UAC, and the Council to support next generation gigabit speed broadband. As you heard last month from Dr. Reichenthal, the Chief Information Officer, that he sees the future going towards 5G rather than fiber to the premises, and those comments were synthesized also in Councilmember Filsath's comments to the Commission. However, going back and seeing what's happened with the Council motion from 1st September 2015 and then November 2015 approving the way the staff wrote the recommendation, and going on, it seems to be on making that transition. It's sort of like holding out the hope in the initiatives in the budget document that, well, there hasn't been a decision made as to what direction the city would be going in regard to next generation gigabit speed, whereas the message I got both at the Citizens Advisory Committee and also at the Commission from Dr. Reichenthal is they see it as going wireless, that the alternative recommendation from staff and also what we had coming from Google before as fiber to the premises is not happening. But over the past year, we had numerous opportunities and promises to come before council with the status, which would have given council the opportunity to make a decision whether they agree with that. I mean, just beginning with last year's budget, one of the initiatives was to issue a request for information, and that was a budget approved on June 13th, and the answers to that request for information came back on June 24th because it had already been sent out in the previous fiscal year. And the Citizens Advisory Committee was told in end of October that the issue would be coming before this commission and the Finance Committee and the council on December 5th. And that never happened, and they were then told in February that it was coming before the commission, the committee, and the council in March. And as you know, that didn't happen again. And so finally, it came to you in April, and the current plan, or the current thing that has been told to at least the Citizens Advisory Committee, that it'll be on the council's agenda on June 5. And I would hope the council has an opportunity, as well as its committee, to discuss that issue rather than relying upon this little statement in their initiatives in the budget document and sort of saying, well, that gives the staff authorization to do what it just did, which is spend the year until council tells it something different. But it's up to staff to place it on council's agenda for the council to make a different decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and go into the utility by utility presentation. Thanks.
So in the electric fund, total revenue for FY18 is about 154. Expenses is projected to be 180 million. So you see there's a drop of 27 million in the reserves. Even after that, we still have a net balance in reserves of 64 million. Of that, 42 million is set aside for special projects, which is for either the second transmission line or the smart grid deployment. And there's also 20 million set aside for operations, another 2 million for CIP and public benefits. Commodity has gone up, mainly because of the new solar projects coming online. There's 5 clean projects, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to bring about 1.6 megawatts. The green premium is about 200,000 more a year compared to market brown price. And overall, all the renewable projects that are online for 2018, the total cost, or the premium, the green premium, is about 1.85 million. CIP, so as you see, 2015-16, we average about 10 million or $11 million of CIP. There are several projects in 2017 that are being deferred to 2018, either because staff didn't have capacity or the customers changed their minds or they weren't ready yet. So one of those large projects was the VA hospital, and that's budgeted around $3 million. That's going to go to 2018. We also have a couple underground projects that are going to be moving into 2018. Under in Channing, Center in Hamilton. And another key driver for the electric fund is debt service. So this is for the Calaveras Hydro project. 13% of our supply is provided from this hydro project on a regular year. So we're expecting half the debt payment to be paid off by 2025 and the rest to be paid off by 2032. So these are the key main drivers. Any questions on that before I go to CIPs? Again, historical expense. If you look at the left side, the FY15 actuals and FY16 actuals compared to the budgets in FY17 and 18. So the budgets are generally a little bit higher than the actuals because we have to load them up front. When we budget for a CIP project, even though it could be a multi-year project, we have to budget all in the first year in order to award the contract. And for salaries and benefits, they're usually a little bit higher than the actuals because of the vacancy savings we realize at the end of the year. So usually it trends upward, but overall it's relatively flat if you looked at 15 and 16. Here's the CIP plan for electric in the next 5 years. So we're requesting for 20 million in 2018. A lot of that is backlog from 27 actually. In 2020, I want to note, is a spike, and that we're setting aside placeholder for the smart grid deployment, about 10 million in 2020, another 5 million in 21 and 22. So that's why there's an increase in those areas. In the 2018 budget, we have those projects highlighted up there, the facility relocation for Caltrains, a smart grid assessment, and part of that 1.5 million is to maybe procure an MDM system and put together business requirements for that. So that's just a placeholder as well. We're going to do upgrades in the Colorado Hopkins substation and do some undergrounding projects. And here's just a trend chart of the CIP projects. So 2018 is a 20 million, and then 20 again is the smart grid, the initial deployment, the 10 million. Some upcoming initiatives for Electric Fund is replacing deteriorating and upgrading equipment, such as cables, transformers, and switches. We're also rebuilding underground districts. The life expectancy of the equipment in underground areas is about 30 to 40 years, so some of them have come up to their life. For the RPS, right, in 2016 we were at 32%, and by 2017 we plan to be at 57%, and by 2018 our goal is to be at 60% of RPS. And in regards to electrification, we have a work plan with like 10 tasks identified to cover the next 5 years, such as heat pump water heaters, time of use, and giving more communication outreach to residents and businesses, and exploring some business code building code changes to accommodate it. Next is the fiber fund. So revenues about 5 million, expenses is 4. The large portion of that is about 1.5 million for CIP. We're still embarking on the fiber rebuild of the network. So phase 1 of that project is almost complete, where we built additional fiber from the Palo exchange to the Park substation. The next leg of work is from Park to Hanson substation, and from there we're going to reach out to the Stanford Research Park area. Those are the areas that we feel were congested, or we audited or inventoried. So we're adding another 312 count of fiber in those areas. Previously we only had 144 count. So that's why you see the spike in the capital improvement budget from year over year. So we're expecting about $1 million to complete the rebuild project. So trending wise is really just CIP is the main change year over year.
So some of the changes, it seems like across the board we're having high percentage increases on CIP.
Right.
Is a lot of that coming from the fact that the last couple of years we had sort of lower than what we expected?
Lower completion, yeah. So a lot of it, the CIP projects are being moved out another year out. It's usually normal, where we budget in the first year, but then it may take a couple of years to finish a project, or 3 years even. So the encumbrance gets rolled over to the following year.
Okay, and I just ask you to keep in mind, is there any problems that the city is going to face, or the utility is going to face, back to Vice Chair Danher's comment, of any deferred capital improvements?
Right, and let me invite staff, whether Dean or others, to weigh in as they see fit. I do think there are a couple of factors that are coming into play that we'd note. I think one, as Dave and others have noted, the vacancies and filling vacancies, in particular in our engineering area, is an issue, and whether that's related to salary and benefits or simply ability to fill the positions. I think that's a relevant and valid point. Another is that in particular for the downtown area, we have had some delay in the project in order to ensure that it's coordinated with other projects. both utilities as well as transportation, street paving, and the like, really wanting to minimize the disruption that will ultimately and inevitably, to a certain extent, occur on projects that we've got on Hamilton, Lytton, Bryant, I believe, as well, and ultimately once sequenced on University Avenue. So that sequence of upcoming projects is actually has intentionally been delayed a bit in order to ensure that it's coordinated and we've mitigated the issues to the extent possible. Anything else, Dean or others want to add?
Well, I think that the other piece is, as we talked earlier, as Dave mentioned, is that, we've pushed some of these CIP projects just because of the funding aspects of it, because what we're finding is the contractors' costs are much higher than what they have been in the past. So, we've had to lessen the mileage portion of it, and then we push that extension piece, and something else then gets pushed as we go forward. So we're making somewhat a concentrated effort that we understand what those trends are looking at now, that we need to do the catch-up portion of it, so we're going to add in some extra dollars to be able to catch up to what we have been spending historically.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that as we've looked at the specifics of the project, and again, I'll let others who are closer to the projects weigh in, that we haven't reached a tipping point where we're concerned about the safety or reliability of the system. It has reflected itself again in the unit costs and the cost of construction having risen so dramatically quicker perhaps than historic trends. So that we're definitely dealing with that in the near term. I suppose, again, as we look at cycles of construction cost increases, that hopefully we're looking at a relatively near-term and hopefully short-term ramp up that won't be sustained. So as a result, we'll catch up in terms of the ability to, again, catch up in the pace of main replacement and replacement of our fixed assets that will be needed over the course of the next several years.
I think also to just ensure the safety aspect, this last gas project that we went out to that was completed about a year and a half ago or so, looked at all the ABS pipe that was actually in the ground. Almost probably about 99% of it has been removed. In this project that we have coming up, in the Nest Gas is actually going to pull the rest of that ABS pipe. Then we're going to have to be dealing with some of the PC or the the PVC, sorry.
I was blanking out on it myself.
Yeah. So we do have some main out there and also some services. And so when we do a full upgrade of the gas system, we change out all the services. We do it for the water as well as the wastewater side. So I think that from a safety reliability aspect, we're more than ahead of that game. And so the safety and reliability is very high on what we're looking at and how we go about changing out the rest of the CIP work.
Good, thanks. Please continue.
In regards to the charts are trending again. The first two on the left are actuals, and the right two are budgets or estimates. So none of it's all. So on if you consider it, like the estimates and the budgets are more like the maximum you can spend during the year, whereas in the actuals is how much we actually got completed. So the budgets are generally higher than the actuals when you're seeing them. So I think we covered all these fiber projects. So for this year, hopefully we'll have some of the fiber rebuild project done, and then next year we should complete it, and then we'll be back to the norm until we hear back from council on what we want to do with fiber to the premise or what the future holds. Again, another picture of the fiber rebuild project. And then here are initiatives. Upgrading the current dark fiber network to provide more capacity in the Stanford Research Park areas, developing a work plan to support next generation gigabit speed broadband. So this is going to policy and services in May and council in June. So they'll have a chance to provide us their input and direction. And also evaluate new opportunities to expand our dark fiber business, which is doing pretty well. Next is the gas fund. So revenue is about 36 million, expenses is 43. We'll see a decrease of 7 million. but we still have an 18 million balance. And with the 18 million, I can give you a breakdown. We have about 9 million set aside for operations reserves, 5 million for rate stabilization, and another 4 million for CIP. And commodity is going up 26% year over year. Commodity costs are increasing about 3 to 4% annually. The PG&E transportation costs are also increasing about 10%. And implementation of the carbon neutral plan with the offsets are going to cost about 1.3 million, we're estimating. Capital improvement, part of the 4.6 million in 2017 is the downtown project, so some of that will be moved to the 2018 budget. And there's no much change on the other categories. Again, here's the trend. CIP basically, and commodities are going up. Everything else stay relatively flat. Here's the 5-year outlook for CIP. So the GMR 22, or the University Downtown Project we call it, is going to be rolling over from 2017 to 2018. And in 2018, we also have a design project on those areas noted above, Loma Verde, Sutter, and Middlefield. We're doing some gas main replacement design work there. And the construction will happen in 2019. So the plan as of right now is to do a gas main replacement every year after still. So we're not reducing it, it's still staying on course as of right now. It's just in this coming up year, we had to finish the gas main projects in the downtown area. And we also finished a large gas main. There's 3 gas main projects we're finishing up in 2017. So that's concluding now, and now we're gonna be working on the downtown. Again, gas initiatives, a downtown project, and also the gas carbon neutral plan that we talked about. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is the cross-bore, sorry. So we are setting aside about $1 million for the cross-bore safety inspection program. So back in the 1970s, there was a change in construction method from trenching to horizontal boring. So by doing so, some gas surfaces were accidentally bored through sewer laterals. So what this safety inspection program do is going to video inspect all the sewer laterals to make sure there are no cross bores of gas lines. So we're about 50% complete right now, and we will be coming to council for a new contract in the upcoming year to do a phase 2 to review the high priority laterals.
So that's just a one-time operation, or is this something that we would want to do sort of on an ongoing basis?
The current plan is a 3-year plan right now to see how much we can get done. We're going to set aside $1 million each year for now.
But if you got 100% done, are you done, or is it sort of like, and then we just want to continue to sort of make sure that no additional cross-bore problems are happening?
So what we've done is we've changed the operational procedure on this. So back then, we just went in and just drilled, and now we're going to go through this. So one of the things that we've changed from an operational is that whenever there's a gas service that's actually bored into the side of the home, that crew, the operational crew has to video that line at the time, and they won't introduce the gas to the service of the home until it's actually cleared at that period of time. So we'll stay on top of it, and as we get through this next 3 years, this will be done then at that point.
All right, next is the wastewater fund. Not very much a highlight here. Again, net reserves is a $1.5 million decrease. We have a balance of $8 million. Operation reserves about $7 million, and CIP is about $1 million. Capital improvements, similar to the other projects, we are finishing up 3 or 4 actually sewer system replacement projects in 2017, closing them up. And some of it's going to be rolled over to actually none of it's being rolled over to 2018. 2018 we'll be focusing more on the gas and water main replacement projects. Historical expenses, as you see, the CIP is the one that drives it mostly, but we're expecting the treatment costs to also start going up year over year as the treatment plant upgrades their facilities. Here's the 5-year outlook for wastewater capital improvement. It's about, we're budgeting about one water or wastewater main replacement every year, beginning in 2019. And one highlight for the wastewater initiative, we'll be doing a cost of service study for the wastewater utility. Last time it was done in 2011, so we'll have one done by the next cycle. And we'll bring those results to you. And now moving on to the water fund. So the $28 million net reserves is about, with $3 million set aside for debt service, $14 million for operations, and another $11 million for our CIP. Again, commodity costs are going up from the SFPUC HHE project. CIP is really rolling over, and some of the $9 million in 2017 will be rolled over to 2018. And no other significant change to highlight. Five-year CIP outlook. We're going to have seismic water upgrades. We're reviewing the reservoirs right now. We're also hiring a consultant to help us examine the existing transmission, distribution, and storage system to determine how to improve the quality, meet the peak fire demands, and improve system reliability. Actually, I don't think that's actually a CIP project. I'm sorry, that's more of an operating. That's in the next slide. That's under the system configuration and reservoirs. And then here is a staffing trend by utility from FY13 through FY18. As you can see, we've been holding staff pretty steady. And in FY18, we do have a couple increases. One was the addition of the chief operating officer in mid-year, and the other one is we're requesting for a new customer service rep for customer service due to the, we've been actually using hourly employees to supplement the customer service call center. So we've been doing it on a year-to-year basis. We finally realized it's a base need. The cost of training and hiring an hourly is almost results about 50,000 a year, and then every year we have to replace them after 1,000 hours, so it didn't make sense to keep hiring hourlies. So we're trying to find a permanent solution. And we're also opened up the new customer service counter downstairs in the lobby. So we have removed one of the call center representatives and for customer-facing engagements. And another thing to know in this one is the vacancy percentages by utility. So electric, it has been steadily high, and it's been ramping up recently. Similar problems is the line person, system operators, power engineers. Those are really hard to fill positions for us. The gas engineering now has been difficult to replace, and same with water and wastewater. We're looking for some supervisors and managers in those positions as well right now. Those have been open. Some have been open for a little longer, some are more recent. But the trend basically is about 15% vacancy we're seeing. And I'm not sure if it's going to change much as of right now. Hopefully we can get this addressed in upcoming years. And we're trying to work with HR to start hiring firms, to recruitment firms, to start soliciting some of these positions. So and so these are the position changes we're recommending for FY18. The first 5 positions is the gas water meter shop reorganization to make them all gas and water techs basically, so they're combined as a hybrid position. Another request is to reclassify equipment operator to become a cement finisher. The equipment operator is actually doing the cement finisher duties. We only have one currently on staff, so this will help give us more staffing flexibility. And the final one is the addition of the customer service rep. And in lieu of that, we're going to be getting rid of some of the hourly employees to cover some of the costs. And that is it for the presentation.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. In past years, we've had the members of the budget subcommittee speak if they want to. And just before, in case you do, I want to thank Commissioners Forcell, Danaher, and Johnston for taking on the responsibility of being the UAC budget subcommittee this year. Thank you very much for taking the extra time.
Thank you.
Yeah, just the budget cycle's long, so I know some of the numbers are loaded early. I recall from last week, we're still using fairly conservative numbers for how much electricity we get from the hydro, and that there's going to be big savings. And elsewhere in the package, I think it mentioned $5 million in savings in the recent quarter. Is that right? Or some? But at any rate, we have upside to the budget in that.
Yes.
Okay.
So the budget was done back in December. So yes, all the hydro wasn't factoring yet at that time, the snowpack.
And the forecast for FY 2017, were those also from December numbers, the ones that you have in the slides here?
We've updated those to show more current. Those are more reflective of the March situation.
So they all show significant increase from 2016. Do you think those forecasts are still pretty reliable at this point, or are we likely to come in lower than those?
I think the commodities and CIP might come a little bit lower than what we're forecasting still.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just mention, I mean, Commissioner Danaher's covered it. When we met, the subcommittee met, I think, our feedback was definitely concern about staffing and the repercussions of being unable to fill all these positions, as well as concern about the sort of continued postponement of capital improvement projects and what the effects of that might be. And, I've kind of concluded this is something to keep an eye on. Like, I hope we're not in the exact same position next year, discovering that that the planned capital improvement projects got deferred and all the positions are still open. For me, that's been the takeaway of the things to keep an eye on in the budget, as well as, I guess, acknowledging that as we fall behind on capital improvement projects, recognizing that there's right now, since that money isn't being spent, rates don't have to increase, and just acknowledging that it might impact rates in the future to be able to play catch up on capital improvement projects going forward.
Just one note. On the capital improvement projects, not all of them are actually being deferred. Some of them are just being completed in the following year. So we're still working on them, but just weren't done in this fiscal year.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. I made a sweeping statement that wasn't accurate. Some are being postponed, but to the point of not replacing as many miles of pipe, for example, to catch back up.
Okay. Yes.
Other comments or questions from commissioners? I want to ask about the second transmission line. What's the status of that? That seems to have taken a long time, and I don't know if that's what you would have expected 7 years ago.
He's starting to worry about his legacy.
Whenever the first time I heard about that. Yeah, obviously the UAC doesn't have much involvement, but it does sort of bug me. It feels like something that's taken an extraordinary amount of time. It feels like a sort of vulnerability for our electric system that seems to be something that you'd want to address as soon as you could. But could you just, and maybe for some other members of the public or commissioners that maybe maybe more new to them, could you just give us a sort of a brief history, or at least a sort of an outlook on it?
Sure, I'll give you perhaps a snapshot. I'm not very good at the history since I hadn't been around until, let's say, not a whole lot of progress has been made. That said, over the course of the last roughly year, we have had a couple of meetings with Stanford University. The primary option that we've been interested in pursuing has been a partnership with SLAC, Stanford Linear Accelerator, and the university. The financial dimensions of that option to provide the second transmission line has really reached the point in terms of analysis that Stanford wanted to evaluate the structure under which it would make sense for the university to make an investment in that project. And I believe our last meeting was about 60 days ago or so. I don't think it's been a whole lot more recently than that. And at this point, I think it's effectively a go-no decision, no-go decision for Stanford. And we have not really pressed them on that, but I think it's about time that we do so, in as much as either they will have concluded that it makes sense for them to proceed, or if it doesn't, that we would pursue the other option, which is via PG&E. And that is a very viable option. So really simply comes down to the decision on whether it makes financial sense for Stanford at this point.
Okay, so I just encourage you to, keep on top of it as much as possible and see if we can't resolve it. Again, just because it feels like one of those things that you wouldn't, in some ways the history doesn't matter. It's today we'd like to have a second transmission connection. So when can we get it,
Agreed, understood.
And that may be something that at the joint session that we do with the city council is the thing that we can make the case that, I think it's certainly one of the things that ought to be a higher priority than some of the other things the city council has us paying attention to. So, yes, I agree with you that I think it's really important, and, but if you only have so many resources or so many, things you can do, then we have to decide what else we're not going to do. And especially if we're having trouble keeping staff at the levels that we need to do all these things.
And my final question is that as you went through the presentation, Dave, one of the things I noticed, with the exception of the fiber fund, each of the reserves have gone down millions of dollars in each one. In past, we've seen those charts that show sort of the minimum amount the reserve can be, the maximum amount that they should be, and then sort of where we are within that band, hopefully. Of course, I don't necessarily like to see the reserves going down, but how are we doing with where we want to be with the reserves?
So with those minimum maximum guidelines, I think we're all within, except for the electric fund. We're slightly below the minimum right now, but we plan to bring it back up next year with the proposed rate increase. And hopefully with a good hydro year, we can see that go back in as well.
Fair enough. Any other discussion or comments? Okay, this is an action item, and staff has asked for us to recommend the council approve both the operating budget and the capital budget as two separate items. Do we have any motions or any discussion on that? Okay, we have a motion. Any second?
I second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, thanks very much. Let's just do this really carefully. Let's say that's for the operating budget, and then, because I've asked it separately for the capital budget, all in favor? Oh, can we have a motion on the second one? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. Okay, great, thanks very much. So, the next item on the new item.
And Dave, thank you for a very good presentation.
Thank you for the
Very helpful.
The next item on our new items is item number 2, energy storage, but we haven't done the minutes yet. So could we just go back and Any discussion or changes for the minutes?
So on page 5 of 16, down towards the bottom, there's a thing that says she, meaning me, had seen a memo from CPUC Commissioner McAllister. So I just wanted to correct that on several levels. So what I saw was a slide presented at the Rush, Renewables Rush conference, and it turned out that it was not Commissioner McAllister, who is a CEC commissioner, not a CPUC commissioner, but in any case. But the person who presented that slide was J. Andrew Murphy, who is a Senior Vice President of Strategic Planning at Edison International. And I've asked a colleague of mine who works there to see if he could get this actual slide for me, and I gave Ed today a paper version of a similar one that had been presented by Nancy Ryan, who's a former commissioner who now is at E3, but it's, anyway, so the correction of who it's from was just, I got the wrong speaker of who had done it, but in any case. So that's correcting which speaker it is.
Thank you. Any other changes or comments?
I just have a procedural question. If I wasn't at the meeting, can I still vote to approve the minutes? I know my vote is needed to make a quorum.
No, I think we have a majority of a quorum to approve something.
So we need a quorum of the full commission to take an action and conduct business. And so it's not like a conflict scenario or sort of opt out, but presumably you have access to sort of the online materials related to the meeting.
In fact, I actually did read some of them.
Yeah, so I think that we should be able to proceed in approving the minutes today.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Does anyone have a motion on the minutes?
I'll move that we.
We have a motion for Commissioner Swartz, second from Vice Chair Danaher. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4-0. So let's go on to new business, item number 2, energy storage.
Okay. My name is Shiva, Senior Resource Planner. So this is a recap of the conversation we've had with the Commission in October. So we'll go over the objective today and application of storage, benefits very briefly. It's a recap again, and then the recommendation, which you have seen previously. So AB 2514, there's a requirement that all publicly owned utilities have to evaluate and set goals for energy storage every 3 years. We look at the cost-effective energy storage, and we look at cost-effectiveness from the perspective of net present value over the life of the project, looking at from a societal perspective, and that's the assessment we did when we presented it to the UAC in October. And then we expected to do this every 3 years. The last time the Commission and the Council approved, we found it to be not cost effective, and the Council declined to set a goal, and the findings haven't changed 3 years later. So a quick recap, we looked at 13 potential value streams, reviewed regulations and policies related to this endeavor, and we looked at 3 case studies, which we discussed at the last meeting. Again, a recap, we looked at 13 applications in 3 broad areas from a customer perspective: customer premise, sited storage behind the customer meter. The second is storage primarily to serve the distribution system. And the third is primarily to meet the transmission requirements. And the logic is a system which in the customer premise can meet the customer's need, the distribution system need, as well as the transmission need. So the location is critical. And we found the value stream to be 100% being cost effective, NPV value of 0. But we found it to be not cost effective, negative NPV values. And based on this finding is what we are recommending today for the UAC to recommend to the council not to set a energy storage goal because it's not cost effective, and then come up with a potential pilot project to the extent it's valuable to the community very soon in the coming months and years. That's all we have.
And so do you have another slide? So this is an action item that you want us to recommend the council does not set a date for having an energy storage system in.
Not to set a goal.
Yeah, not set a goal date right yet. Okay. And what is the effect of what would happen next then?
Upon your recommendation, we'll go to council, and when council acts, we'll file it with the California Energy Commission, and that'll meet the requirement. There are other municipal utilities doing the same as we speak, and it's due to the CEC in October.
Okay. And is there any, would you expect them to come back and say, you need to set a target or what?
We don't at this point, but there is some legislation and regulation contemplated that perhaps some kind of a requirement that it be set in the future, even if it may not be cost effective, but nothing for now.
So to that point, I think there are a couple of corollary comments worth noting. One, and perhaps Commissioner Schwartz, we can engage in follow-up. She had given us a heads up on a question that she'd like to ask in comparison of this conclusion with what some of the, the investor-owned utilities are doing to implement storage systems. Before we get to that, I think it might be helpful, Shiva, if you could note our understanding of where other publicly owned utilities are, because we're basically with the pack with respect to that.
Yeah, so most of the public utilities have not set goals, but if you look at your report on page number 4 of the report from October, it lists a few entities which have set goals, publicly owned utilities, page 4 of the attachment, which is the October report, where it lists a number of POUs who have set the goals, but they have unique situations. They're either very small or they have unique situations. For example, LADWP set a 24 megawatt goal for 2016 and 154 megawatt goal for 2020. That's table 1 I'm looking at. So different folk sets, but most of, for Reading, for example, they are in a very hot climate, so they're using ice bears, the thermal energy storage, making ice to have better, more efficient cooling systems. So different use cases. Santa Clara is kind of our closest. They have a very small system, 30 kW.
And in fact, my understanding in looking at that specific situation is it's a grant-funded project. So to Shiva's point, there are some unique circumstances for the agencies that have chosen to proceed with a goal. I think to a certain extent, or maybe to a large extent, our conclusion is driven by the mandate for a cost-effectiveness finding as a basis for setting a goal. So with that, Commissioner Schwartz, perhaps you want to lead in with your thoughts, and we can engage from there, if that suits the commission.
So one of the things that I learned about this week was a program that PG&E is doing, that they are offering energy storage and generation incentives to their customers. And so this is now something that is going to be promoted in our locality. And as we noticed with their EV rebate program, Palo Alto, there were some Palo Alto customers who tried to apply because they thought, okay, well, why can't I get that? And next door we had the conversation of, well, you're not their customer. But I think that, we have to realize that given the area that we're in, they are going to know that. So I think that, I'd like us to have an answer of why we're not doing it, okay, that we can agree on is the reason, and then to have something and be prepared to communicate with the public when the questions come up, which they inevitably will, and is there something we could do that would be, I'd say fairly passive, that isn't necessarily a paid incentive program, but would be something that might be an easier permitting process or something like that. Because I look at this kind of issue as distributed investment. So it's not only distributed generation or distributed storage, but it's distributed investment. So if somebody, wants to expand their, Tesla holdings with their 2 Teslas in the garage, that they want to have a power wall in there, I think we can be supportive of it without necessarily, paying them to do it. And so I just think we should acknowledge that it's going to be out there, that other people are, and so, our answer why, so I guess I'd like to start with that, is what's our answer why we're not, why, because if our argument is it's not ready yet, why does PG&E think it's ready, okay? And so I think we need an answer for that.
Yeah. So the PG&E and other investor-owned utilities have a long-standing program called the SGIP program, Small Generation Incentive Program. It's and storage. They used to provide, or they still provide, for fuel cells, microturbines, small wind, not solar, and these measures were not supposed to be cost-effective. They are above cost. That's the whole idea of. So it's a market transformational kind of program approved by the CPUC, and it's under that program that now they have incorporated energy storage. So it's not a cost-effective tested program. It is a market transformation program. And as a smaller utility, we have found we could have a program like that on a smaller scale, if you so choose. And that's the idea of the pilot we have talked about. And so it's not cost-effective, but they have been mandated to do that through regulations.
And I think one key part of this message is to remind people that as a very large investor-owned utility, PG&E has a very large rate base that can be used to fund small but significant market transformational programs like this, where small utilities like Palo Alto simply can't. So looking for other ways to leverage our unique value, like the fact that we can coordinate well with our building division, is compelling.
I guess my comment also is to Catherine in that, I think we should be prepared with what our answer is, and the fact that it's not coming, the money wouldn't come from the big PG&E rate base, but it would come from out of everybody's pockets, is to me a reasonable argument that we should say that. But again, I think if we can come up with something clever or substantive that, you know, that encourages people to do it, that I think that would be a good idea, and we should try to have that as a modifier or an addition to, you know, maybe they don't set a target, but that we explore creative ways to encourage people to do self-investment of if they're willing to do it, and what can we do to help them, whether it's technical expertise or something like that.
And the idea of permit streamlining, there have been some power walls which have been installed, and so we've been part of that effort to make sure that it's taken care of and done in a pleasant manner. But a pilot is contemplated for the coming years, is to kind of help not just but also kind of plan for the future. Yes, it's not cost effective now, a mini market transformation, not market, but more of a learning experience. So that's the idea behind the pilot.
And I think in terms of a pilot that, you know, this is one of those cases where in terms of the pilot design, you know, it should not be done in the, you know, where there's like the double-blind medical study plan for pilot. You know, this should have a different kind of flavor to it, and you know, things that maybe the fire department gets involved in terms of what are the kinds of things that they're going to have to do differently, that they should know about if a house has one of these batteries in there, that they may need to approach it differently, that kind of thing, so that our pilot could be on the safety side as well as you know, other considerations.
Right. So our current thought is those, and also to try to, if you can get a large enough volume to dispatch into the ISO, because there's more reliable than a, say, demand response program. So you will hear from us on the distributed energy resource strategy later this year, and the energy storage component would be a part of that.
You know, that's really interesting, because I think also if we could even look at, if we're going to look at it from an aggregated DR perspective, could we do a hot water heater program, since those are out there and really working, and maybe that's a place where we can even try,
Yep.
you know, doing advanced metering for those kinds of, I really like the idea of that. I think that could be very cool.
Okay. Thank you.
So technologies like this, is that going to be considered within the strategic plan, or just how do they interrelate with that? And smart grid as well, because some smart grid enables different ways to meet some of the same goals.
Well, I think the connection, take the second one first, in terms of smart grid, they reflect themselves in the types of resources that we need to plan for within our staff, among our priorities as programmatically. The specifics here, I think, would ultimately just be an example of that, and to the extent that we are building in, as a part of our work plans, the capacity to do, whether they be small-scale pilots, larger-scale pilots, or full-on deployments, is how it would reflect itself in the strategic plan and the resources we need to plan for and advocate.
Add to that also is what is the strategic plan. We will explore what do we want to be. Do we want to own electric vehicle chargers or not? So the bigger picture items would be set by the strategic plan, which the technology plan then would follow to implement or not implement, depending on where we want to be in 10 years.
Great, okay, thank you, everyone. This is new business item number 2. It's an action item. The request is up on the screen. Do we have any motions towards that?
I'd like to add the motion with the amendment that we encourage, that we could recommend to the council to decline setting a target, but that we exploration and facilitation of ways to encourage investment by members of the community. Words to that effect.
Budget neutral member ways to facilitate
That's fine.
consumer investment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, so that's your
So
motion?
that's my motion on the table.
Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
We have 4-0. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, we'll go to item number 4, strategic plan, which is a discussion item.
Yes, thank you. This will actually be a quick update. We don't have a whole lot to report since we are still in the procurement process, selection process for the consultant assistance that we have been seeking. We do have a series of slides that are actually more of a compilation and resource than necessarily something that would be worth going through today. Let's see, we've identified these key drivers, and I'll recap those on an overview basis. It will probably make more sense to dive into those once we do have the consultant on board, as well as talk about specifically where we are in that. This is a graphic that we used at the outset of our strategic planning effort as a way of just outlining the path we're on. Ranging from our identification of our key program and policy drivers to emerging issues and the consultant assistance that we are hopefully in the final throes of bringing back, and we'll hopefully bring that back in June. Our SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, then organizational needs, and wrapping it up into the plan document itself, but really both the process as well as the engagement along the way being the essence of the planning effort. To give you, let's see where we are. I think I need that. Did something there. Oh, that worked. Okay. So just to, again, give you a bit of a snapshot, flyover of what we mean by the key drivers, what we did was compile some of the statutory mandates that we're operating under, both at a policy level as well as operationally. So the next series of slides are the compilation that we did at a staff level, and we issued it actually as an addendum to the request for proposal that we send out for the consultant assistance, just as a starting point on some of the mandates that we're under, both from, in this case, the state and federal level, ranging from Public Utilities Code and specific pieces of legislation such as AB 32, all the way down to the agencies that regulate our activities on an ongoing, at least periodic, in some cases daily basis, from the really most applicable, the Energy Commission, to a certain extent CPUC, and by Department of Transportation, we're actually referring to the Federal Department of Transportation in the case of gas transportation and safety. Also reflects themselves in the council direction and directives that we receive from our regulations and practices as reflected in the municipal code, to policy directives such as the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, and again, all the way down to project-specific directives or program-specific directives such as the Fiber to the Premises initiative, and again, next steps being taken hopefully soon on that one specifically. And in the middle, really a bit of a as a newcomer, I'll say a maze of plans and programs that have been established over the course of time. And in some ways, the strategic planning effort may provide us the opportunity to simplify some of these and to consolidate some of the plans that have been established over the course of years, and perhaps boil them down into more at least concise, if not digestible plans that as we bring forward to the commission and ultimately the council can have a clearer integration of how some of these individual plans fit together. Then finally, and this actually then leads into a series of slides of what we have often among staff referred to as the iceberg, where the last two slides refer to what's visible to our policymakers at the council and at the commission, that below the surface or below the waterline, so to speak, being the real volume of regulatory requirements that staff is charged with implementing and complying with on a day-to-day basis. So we've got our electric utility operational directives and regulatory framework, and a couple of slides, a series of specific programmatic directives that are relevant on a day-to-day basis, and the same true for gas and regulations, and finally, for water, some of the key drivers and statutory frameworks that work is done, and same for fiber. So again, it's simply a kind of an overview here that give you a sense of some of the elements that we'll be coming back to once we have the consultant on board and working through how our resources align with our ability to deliver on those directives. And let's see, so in terms of the consultant selection, we did receive 13 proposals. We conducted interviews, and we're currently in the process of negotiations with the finalists in order to hopefully be able to come forward with a recommended award and bring that back to council action in June, and then that would bring us back to the commission as soon as we've got that report out ready for announcement.
And is it possible to get to see the lists?
Yeah, so, following the earlier discussion, I think what, in fact, and again, this is fitting within our Palo Alto process, I don't think we've typically listed out the who's proposed, but I see no problem with that, so I'd be happy to do that. The one caveat or something I'd like to discuss with staff, I know you had perhaps maybe indirectly, if not directly, suggested that the bid, per se, be included. The dollars are really just one factor among many that are considered in coming up with a recommendation. So I'd actually suggest perhaps that we not do the dollars, because it puts more focus on the price portion of the proposal than really I think does justice.
May I suggest you just make whatever information you can available to Commissioner Schwartz offline,
Okay.
not present it to the rest of us. I think it discourages bidders if they know the bids, or they lost a bid or something like that is out there, and we don't need, the rest of us don't need to see that, but Commissioner Schwartz may have some insights.
Okay, be happy to do that. All right, very good. And so we'll proceed with that, and again, hopefully, let's see, this would be in June and July, be able to really hit the ground running on this work.
All right. So if you, that slide up there, understanding emerging issues, we're probably a little behind schedule on that, but you say you'll get input from UAC and City Council. Being able to do that at least a month in advance of that combined City Council UAC meeting might be useful as well. I know that's the next agenda item on our topic here,
Right.
but our next topic on our agenda. Anything else we can do to tee up thinking in advance of that for people to reflect on would be good.
Very good. We'll do what we can to get that set up in advance, recognizing that sequence.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to new business item number 5, joint study session between the council and the Utilities Advisory Commission.
Thank you. As Commissioner Danaher just noted, that we've got your upcoming joint session with the council in August. I believe it's August 21st, if I get my dates correct. this point, recognizing that we will also unfortunately have some turnover with the chair on the commission. We'll have a new chair by that time. We've started the query of the mayor and vice mayor, which is typically the protocol to set a meeting between the chair, vice chair, and the mayor, vice mayor in advance of the session in order to identify the topics that might be teed up for both bodies to discuss for prioritization. At this point, haven't gotten any specific feedback on that. I indicated to them that I thought that the strategic plan would certainly be a key undertaking in the upcoming year, as well as the second transmission line, knowing that that's high on everyone's radar screen, as well as the, lost my notes there, and in fact, froze my computer.
Fiber to the premise.
Fiber to the premises as the other issue that I'm sure that you'd want to discuss.
You say August 21st or 26th? I couldn't.
I heard August 21st.
August 21st is what he
August
said earlier.
21st.
Because
Yes.
I'm going up to see the eclipse in Oregon, and I won't be here on August. I'll be flying back on August 21st. I just want to express extreme disappointment
Yes.
because I've been waiting for this for years, and I guess there's nothing I can do about it.
Although I'm sure, actually, whether it be today or between now and then, we can always have another opportunity to compile a list of topics and expressions of interest.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So, yeah, my recommendation is don't change, well, with all respect to Commissioner Schwartz, I would recommend not changing the meeting date for one reason alone, which is it's been so long since we've had the meeting anyway. But if you guys can figure out a good way to move it and fit Commissioner Schwartz, that'd be great. But, I'd hate to delay it any more than we have to. Okay, item number 6 is selection of potential topic or topics for discussion at future UIC meeting.
Leading into your discussion, I would note that we have gotten the rolling calendar online now, finally. And my apologies, it's taken us a while.
Thank you very much.
So we do have it online, and in fact, I think we'll want to experiment a little bit with the format. It may make sense for us to actually add it to your agenda, or to your agenda document linked, rather than as a separate link
That makes
on the
sense to me,
page.
yeah.
And let's see, would note on the upcoming agendas in June, we're making a change. I believe Commissioner Schwartz is not.
Decided no, there weren't enough people who could make a different date, so.
Right. So we're going to juggle the agenda, though, so that the community solar item and potentially the long-term electric acquisition plan happen in July.
Oh, okay.
If, again, subject to our finding a new date for the July meeting, given that that's currently scheduled for the 5th. So we will doodle for a new July date.
Okay, and the backup is I'll just give you a copy of my report to
Yes.
share, but.
And commissioners, do you have any topics you want to make sure that we're including for future meetings? Okay, seeing none, our next scheduled meeting is June 7th. I just want to take a look at my calendar, make sure that's correct, even though that will not include me. So that is the first Wednesday of the month. Okay.
Yes, and unfortunately, we doodled on that one
okay.
and confirmed that only Commissioner Schwartz is not able to make it.
Would you send us in advanced bios on any new commission members?
Will do.
Thanks.
I believe the council is voting on that this coming week.
Okay, in that case, we're done. Adjourned.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.